January 30th, it's closing arguments. We left out yesterday, day 9 of trial, with some conversation about what indictments the prosecution was going forward with because they have charged a aggravated murder, the aggravating circumstance to raise that above a first-degree murder is multiple murder. But you can't have 2 indictments for multiple murder for the same 2 murders. So there was conversation about how they were doing that to make sure that they had the aggravated murder for the jury. Then I think they also wanted 2 counts of first-degree murder, which allows them to then have all of the lesser included. So there was some conversation at the end of a very long day yesterday. The court was like, we can just do this in the morning before we go to closing arguments. So we're going to catch up with that jury trial conference just before we go to closing arguments, and then we will switch over to closing arguments, which have not begun yet. We're going to court, everybody.
The defendant is charged with the crime of aggravated murder. The Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements of that crime. Number 1, that the defendant killed Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. And number 2, that the killings were willful, deliberate, and premeditated. And number 3, that the killings occurred within a 3-year period. If you find from the evidence that the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt each of the above elements of the crime is charged, then you shall find the defendant guilty of the aggravated murder of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. If you find that the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt any of the elements of the crime, then you shall find the defendant not guilty. The defendant is charged with the crime of aggravated murder. The Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements of that crime. Number 1, that the defendant killed Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. And number 2, that the killings were willful, deliberate, and premeditated. And number 3, that the killings occurred as part of the same act or transaction. If you find from the evidence that the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt each of the above elements of the crime as charged, then you shall find the defendant guilty of the aggravated murder of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. If you find that the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt any of the elements of the crime, then you shall find the defendant not guilty. Willful, deliberate, and premeditated means a specific intent to kill adopted at some time before the killing, but which need not exist for any particular length of time. A willful act is one done with a bad purpose or without justifiable excuse, or without ground for believing it is lawful. A willful act is intentional or knowing or voluntary as distinguished from accidental. The terms bad purpose or without justifiable excuse require knowledge that the particular conduct will likely result in injury or illegality. To prove the charge of murder, the Commonwealth does not have to prove a motive for the killing. The presence or absence of a motive may be considered in arriving at your verdict. Brendan Banfield is charged with the crime of using a firearm while committing or attempting to commit murder. The Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements of that crime. Number 1, that Brendan Banfield used the firearm. And number 2, that the use occurred while Brendan Banfield was committing or attempting to commit murder. If you find from the evidence that the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt each of the above elements of the crime as charged, then you shall find Brendan Banfield guilty. If you find that the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt either or both of the elements of the crime, then you shall find Brendan Banfield not guilty. A firearm is any instrument that is capable of expelling a projectile by force or gunpowder. A firearm is also an object that is not capable of expelling a projectile by force or gunpowder, but gives the appearance of being able to do so. The existence of a firearm may be proved by circumstantial evidence, direct evidence, or both. Brendan Banfield is charged with the crime of child endangerment. The Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt the following elements of that crime. Number 1, that Brendan Banfield had custody of Mallory Banfield, who was a child under the age of 18. And number 2, that he willfully or negligently caused or permitted the life of such child to be endangered. If you find from the evidence that the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt both of the above elements of the crime as charged, then you shall find Brendan Banfield guilty of child endangerment. If you find that the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt either or both of the elements of the crime, then you shall find Brendan Banfield not guilty.
The judge has read the instructions to you. They'll go back to the jury room with you, and you're going to have those as your guide in making your decision. I would draw your attention to the fact that you've been given 2 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of use of a firearm in commission of murder, and 1 count of child endangerment. Talking first about the aggravated murder instructions. They have 3 parts. You'll first need to find that Brendan Banfield killed Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. You'll need to find that those killings were willful, deliberate, and premeditated. You'll need to find for one of the counts that those 2 murders occurred within a 3-year period, and for the other count that those 2 murders occurred within the same transaction or occurrence. We know that they were killed during the same event within the Banfield residence, so that should knock that one out for you. 3 years, pretty
Easy.
simple as well.
Easy, ladies and gentlemen.
Occurred on the same day. It's
Aggravated murder or nothing.
That Brendan Banfield killed both Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. We know that on February 24th, 2023, he executed his plan to murder his wife and an innocent stranger. He was in love with Juliana. He can pretend that this was a fling, an affair. He'd had them before, no big deal. He was in love with Juliana. He was afraid of losing her. He needed to get rid of his wife so that they could be together, so that they could marry, so that they could have those babies that he was picking out names for. You needn't rely only on Juliana's story. There has been a plethora of evidence to help you meet your burden in this case. Let's walk through just the highlights. Our digital evidence. While the digital evidence cannot tell us definitively who was behind the screen, we heard that a bunch. We know that to be true.
It tells us some things.
What it can tell us is that Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhaes are more likely to be the ones to have set up Joe Ryan to come into the house to fake rape Christine on February 24th. There is
I like
no
that she's
digital
sticking to
history,
setup.
none, of Christine Banfield using dating sites, fetish sites, searching for pornography, talking to other men prior to the January inception of this scheme.
That point.
The FetLife and Telegram usage only ever occurred when Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhaes are in the home. Is it at all plausible that this woman wouldn't take advantage of an empty house to engage in her plans for adultery? That on the 2 weekends that her husband and the nanny are out of the house, those are the 2 weekends where we see zero FetLife activity, zero Telegram activity?
That part.
Let's look at the chats themselves. Slide 1. How many potential targets were turned down by Juliana and Brendan because they wanted to meet in person first? Because they wanted to talk on the phone? Because they wanted pictures that
Because there were
included
rules,
Christine's face?
boundaries.
Does this make any sense for someone?
I didn't realize that the photos on FetLife didn't have her face in them.
Seeking
Didn't even think about
a
that.
new relationship in a area of sexual exploration that would be new to them? Why would the real Christine Banfield have been concerned about taking these safety precautions? For that matter, why would the real Christine Banfield have been searching for someone who was willing to engage in knife play when she had a blood clotting disorder?
I know. That's what we said.
The knife Brendan used to kill her was a kitchen knife with an approximately 4-inch blade, the kind you use for chopping up vegetables. This was the knife that Joe Ryan brought because Anastasia asked him to. This was not the killing knife that Brendan Banfield had envisioned for his scheme.
Yeah, it's not a murdery knife. Right.
Next.
It's a prop
Joe
knife.
Ryan was shot twice. Once in the head by Brendan Banfield, incapacitating him. A second time by Juliana in the chest, tearing a large hole through his heart and lodging in his spine. His wounds were rapidly fatal, according to Dr. Kessler, and we saw that there was little to no blood from the chest wound. Iris Daly-Graf told you that he would have been incapable of movement.
She just made an excellent point. Little to no blood from the chest wound. Remember, they have to show that he killed Joe Ryan as well. Why would there be little to no blood from the chest wound? Well, if your heart has already stopped, when you are shot, there is going to be little to no blood. Also, he's not standing up and hitting Banfield on the back in between the two shots. Because remember, Banfield said he got hit on the back on the shoulder blade, and then he got shot. If he was able to get up and move, wouldn't that chest shot be bleeding? a lot.
We saw Christine's phone turned off at 6:46 a.m. and hidden in a drawer in a bar table in the kitchen.
That part.
This is just not where you keep your phone. This is not where we heard that this woman kept her phone. This is not where a person who's about to engage in potentially risky behavior puts her source of help. A floor away, turned off, in a drawer, off to the side of the kitchen.
Yup.
Just doesn't make sense.
No sense at all.
And finally, the blood evidence. You heard from Lieutenant Giacchio and former Deputy Chief Bruce that it was Iris Dallygraph's report that finally pushed this case over the edge and brought the charges against Mr. Banfield months before Juliana decided to flip. That's how strong this evidence is.
That part.
That's how reliable this evidence is. They have provided no explanation for Christine's blood smeared on the right hand of Joe Ryan, leaving voids between the fingers. They have no explanation for the blood smeared across the top of the right onto the left, leaving that void on Joe Ryan's hand where they had been overlapping. For that matter, you have
She's
no
showing them
explanation
pictures
from
while she's talking
defense
about this.
for how his hands came to be in that position, neatly folded on his chest, covering the bullet wound that penetrated his spine, immobilizing him. How could that have happened if you were to believe Mr. Banfield? Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhaes colluded to kill Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield. That makes sense. They created accounts, they chatted up potential victims, they got Joe Ryan into the house, and then they shot him. Brendan stabbed Christine, let her bleed out on the floor, and then dripped, smeared, and wiped her blood on Joseph Ryan's body to make it look like he had attacked Christine. Then they called the police. Brendan let Juliana take the fall.
Then they called the
And
police.
it took a little bit of doing, but here we are, and it's his turn.
Yeah, don't let it work. His planning is clear in how long it took to arrest them and to arrest him. It shows that it took work to get to him, but they got to him before Juliana flipped. It's a great point.
To be held accountable.
That gap in time on those
All of
911
this
calls
evidence can leave you with
is
no
so
doubt
loud.
that Brendan Banfield killed Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield. That is the first element of the aggravated homicide statute. The hard work is done. Element 2, that the killing was willful, done with a bad purpose, intentional, and deliberate. There can be no question in your minds as to the intentionality of this act, the deliberateness of this act. The second offense is for the use of a firearm in the commission of the murders. We know from our experts that Joe Ryan died of his multiple gunshot wounds,
He admitted
one
to
of which came
using
from
a
Brendan.
firearm, so that's...
If you have any question
That's
about
pretty
whether or
easy.
not Brendan can be held responsible when Juliana also shot Joseph Ryan,
I'm glad
you'll
she's-
have instruction O.
I'm glad she's answering
That
that.
is concerted action. So I'm going to read to you what it says. If there is concerted action with the resulting crime, one of its incidental probable consequences, then whether such crime was originally contemplated or not, all who participate in any way in bringing it about are equally answerable and bound by the acts of every other person connected with the consummation of such resulting crime. Virginia makes it.
She's going to say Virginia makes it easy. Y'all know how much I love it when the attorneys use the jury instructions in closing argument. It's one of my favorite things, especially when there's some jury instructions they need to highlight. I think concert of action is a great jury instruction for her to highlight. She put it up on the screen and is highlighting that jury instruction for them. How many of you had that question? Like, okay, but what if Juliana was the fatal shot? And does that answer it?
Of every other person connected with the consummation of such resulting crime. Virginia makes it easy. Translate. If you think that Juliana Perez Magalhaes and Brendan Banfield were working together to kill Christine and Joseph Ryan, then Brendan can be responsible for Joseph Ryan's death, regardless of which bullet did the most damage. It's not a test of either or. They were working together. That makes him equally
Everybody's responsible. Y'all in it together.
The last charge is the endangerment to Mallory. So while in his custody, that the defendant willfully or negligently caused or permitted the life of such child to be endangered. He made it out to be Juliana's idea, but he brought Mallory into that home. He left her in the basement, knowing that Joe Ryan was upstairs. He left her in the basement while he shot and killed Joe Ryan. He left her in the basement while he stabbed his wife. He could have locked the door. He could have done this on a day she wasn't home. He could have made arrangements for someone else to have her overnight. But that didn't work with his plan.
Counsel, how dare you? It was his
So
birthday.
he's guilty of this offense as well.
Sarcasm.
I appreciate, again, all of the
Oh, she's
attention
almost
you've
done.
given. I appreciate, again, all of the hard work you're about to face. Please be thoughtful in your deliberations. But at the end of the day, I don't think that there can be any reasonable doubt that Mr. Banfield has committed each and every one of the offenses that we have put before you today.
When my children were younger, I used to walk out of the house and tell them, I'm going to defend the Constitution. They didn't have any idea what that
Everyone has a right to a fair trial. Because when there's nothing else to say.
was, and oftentimes that became, okay, whatever, Dad. I was a prosecutor then. I was a prosecutor in Fairfax County.
Back in my day.
What that meant to me was you presented a case, no matter who it was, you presented a case where you looked at all possibilities and you looked at all evidence to determine and to make sure that you were pursuing someone that the evidence would support. And even I was surprised that the evidence that ultimately was presented by the Commonwealth was actually from my case.
You didn't see that coming, did you?
I chuckle a little bit when Miss Sands says,
What?
we haven't proved anything. We haven't shown any evidence. All we've done is show evidence. All we've done is try to get the truth out there. My client doesn't have to testify, yet he gets.
Yet he chose to.
We've done is show evidence. All we've done is try to get the truth out there. My client doesn't have to testify, yet he gets up there and he tells a story. He's a philanderer. We can conclude that.
But it wasn't his
It's
best
horrible.
friend.
It's a horrible situation to be in. He had affairs. He accepted that. He told you, ladies and gentlemen,
He had cookies.
exactly what was going on and exactly how it went. This is about the truth. In the beginning, you heard our duty is about fairness. Our duty is about being just, all those sorts of things. Yet you don't put on any of your detectives. She's referring to the expert that they have that I called. I called 3 times. And
She was talking about the blood expert, sir.
you saw his demeanor. He was
We definitely saw Detective Miller's demeanor. You definitely called him to the stand 3 times, and he definitely said, I don't stand by the conclusions in my original report.
very uncomfortable. Why would he be uncomfortable? Why would he have been uncomfortable talking about his work?
I know.
And we dug for it. We dug for it. And he
I know.
ultimately said, the executive summary and the data remain the same.
Objection misstates the evidence.
The only thing that changed is Juliana Perez Magalhaes' statement.
No, that's not what he said.
Let's just look at how Juliana Perez Magalhaes managed this. Regarding the Gmail setup on January
she
9,
did it?
2023, Juliana told the Commonwealth that she was at the house with Brendan when she witnessed him create the Gmail account that was used to kick off the entire catfishing scheme.
That's not what she said.
The Commonwealth took her at her word. The police didn't make any effort to corroborate her story. The one detective who stood up and said the evidence contradicted her story was transferred off the case. She's told, if you testify against him, we'll recommend time served disposition. She can go back to Brazil, be with her mom, create her new life. And we know a little bit about the new life that she's planning on creating.
We're going to talk about Netflix, huh?
And you have it in the documents that are before you. She's been negotiating with people who are connected to Netflix. She's been negotiating with people who are connected to Hulu. She's been talking to every other news media at first to try to see if they just put $50 into her commissary. But then she realized, hey, there may be something here. She's invented, she's going to try to write letters. She's going to try to write a book. She wants to have a documentary. She wants to have a series. And she's about to sign or about to agree when her lawyer steps in and says, don't sign that. And so around March of 2025, you see negotiations essentially end. The number was in the area of $25,000, and it was going to be sent to her mother in Brazil. It's a lot of money in Brazil. And so where's the downside for her? Where's the downside for her? I mean, there are plenty of people who would make that decision, given the circumstances, given you're 2 weeks from the trial, when your attorney asked for a continuance. And oddly enough, he was asking to find a digital forensic examiner. If they'd done that, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Maybe they would have realized how strong the digital forensics examinations are.
But they were recording the dog, though, counsel.
Her entire story
They were recording the husky, though. Her lawyer wanted to do that.
has been bought and paid for.
Oh, you
First,
wanted that line.
with her freedom,
There it is.
and then now a little bit on the back end. When you have a theory that gets pushed from non-investigative command staff, and you have a theory that the investigators look at, then you create something called tunnel vision. And that tunnel vision, if you're following what essentially are orders, is to the exclusion of any other evidence,
Counsel.
any other theory, such as maybe this is a rekindling of previous fantasies, and the guy who brought the knife to the house
Danger. Danger. Danger, counsel. This is not going to be the serve you think it is.
is the stabber. Juliana Perez Magalhaes is doing what probably anyone would do who's from another country, who comes here for an adventure, which is what au pair exchange is. It's essentially a cultural exchange. And the idea is you get to live in the country and you get to live like people in the United States. And then you go back at the end of your time. She knew at the point when she was hospitalized to the point of sickness as a result of what was going on in her life that she had to do something. And the Commonwealth and the police broke her. She turned down a misdemeanor, according to her, in January, on January 1st, and you'll see it in the communications. She turned down a misdemeanor, and all she had to do was testify against Brendan. In July, you hear her recounting her meeting with her lawyer, where her lawyer floats the idea, well, what about a manslaughter, time served, and you don't have to testify against Brendan. She agreed to that. That was never what they were talking about. That was never what they wanted to do. Now, let's just talk a little bit about the prosecution's evidence. Brendan's DNA is not on the knife. That's also supported by those same forensics
I was wondering if he was going to point
He
that
doesn't have any
out.
injuries to his hands. That was confirmed by EMTs. In fact, poor officer, I'm sorry, the young man who was 1 year on, I forget his name now. He was brought up to introduce his video and then was asked, well, why'd you let him wash his hands? And you can see my client, for a period of probably 40 minutes, is literally walking around, in a trance from what he was just involved with. And he was walking around with blood all over his hands.
From what he was just involved with, your client was walking around the hospital in a trance from what he was just involved with. You can't even mustering up saying my client was walking around the hospital dazed because he had shot someone who had brutally murdered his wife. How do you expect the jury to agree with it if you can't say it?
They're not putting on any evidence in terms of their own investigators They're not providing any concrete evidence as to what happened that day. And interestingly enough, the shift in the last closing argument was that I hadn't been doing that. And the defense hadn't been doing that. But I think we can all agree that we've called a significantly greater number of police witnesses because we had to.
Oh.
Because we want the truth out here. I called my client, though he has the absolute right not to.
He does have the right not to, just not the ability.
And the relationship issues with Juliana Perez Magalhães are touchy, and they're an awful story. But he sat there and he answered the questions. He was cross-examined. He answered those questions. We're bringing you the truth. We're trying in every way to get the truth. And many of the Fairfax County detectives have provided that, and that goes to their integrity.
You're getting real close to vouching, sir.
We saw use of Christine's laptop for 90 minutes for resort searches, with a couple of minutes of Telegram use interspersed. The Commonwealth in cross-examination opined, well, wouldn't it be possible that even if you were sitting in the same room, that she could have gone away to go to the bathroom for 2 minutes? And I guess, in this world, anything's possible. Is it probable, however? And that's really the more germane point to this. The Commonwealth.
They should have focused on this point a lot more and the timing of this point a lot more and left out a lot of the other stuff. Because by this point, I don't even know if the jury is still with him, but the closeness in time on the same device is one of the things that they can work with out of a whole lot of things they can't work with.
Is it reasonable after a 6 to 8 week affair?
Why did you grab more paper?
That someone's going to try to get rid of their companion of 19 years, wife of 12 years? Is that reasonable? You heard from my client. He thinks it's absurd.
He did say that.
In pursuing this case, the Commonwealth has presented absolutely no forensics evidence that supports that Brendan Banfield had anything to do with this, yet the story continues. This isn't how justice works, and you can't just come up with a theory and make it fit. They're trying to sell you a story without any facts, and we have the facts, and those facts are in evidence. Those jury instructions, when you see them, you'll realize they're very clear. If you have doubts about the investigation, if you have doubts about how they've conducted this investigation, if you believe that there's something that's been held back in this investigation, that's reasonable doubt. That's reasonable doubt before you even get into the things that negate the possibilities of their case. And these are hard decisions. There's a lot on the line. But know this, if they fell short in what you expect should be the investigation, if they fell short, that's not on you. The jury instructions say you must acquit. And it's not on you. I don't have another opportunity to talk to you. It's their burden to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt, so they get the opportunity to speak. So I apologize if I've gone too long.
You have.
But I wanted to make sure that these important issues came before you.
Okay.
I might leave you with these words. When they lie and manipulate to get someone to make a statement, that's not discovering the truth. That's planting the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your patience. And at the end of your deliberations, I ask that you find my client not guilty of all charges.
Why was there so much discussion and disagreement over the digital evidence? Because it could never be that smoking gun. You all heard it from their expert. You can't put someone behind that screen unless you're sitting next to them. So as much as we want it to tell the story here, as much as we want it to be the perfect evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that this thing had to happen, the digital evidence just isn't that. We wish it were, but it's not. And Detective Miller did nothing wrong, and Mr. Lidsky did nothing wrong. They just told you the truth. And the truth is that they can tell you what a device was doing, but they can't tell you who was using the device. Whose story is more credible here? Juliana's or Mr. Banfield's? Whose version does the rest of the evidence support? The defendant took the stand and he lied. And he lied about collateral matters. He told you that he had...
I'm waiting for her to say he's a liar. He took the stand and he lied. Are we going to talk about the boss? Let's talk about the boss. Talk about the boss.
Had a big career-defining work meeting.
There's the lie.
He told you that he had a big career-defining work meeting the morning of the murder.
Big, huge.
And then you heard from his boss who said, no, he didn't. He lied.
That part. He lied.
He said that he and Juliana did not have a plan to kill Christine at the time that they went to the shooting range.
Oh,
Well, he said
you caught that?
to kill Christine at the time that they went to the shooting range. Well, he said not at that time. If he's lying about the things that don't matter, how can you believe a single word he said? And ladies and gentlemen, you have to do that in this case, because without some alternate theory, the Commonwealth's evidence is uncontroverted. So you got to pick one. Juliana, Mr. Banfield.
Oh boy, that's
Whose story does the evidence support?
okay.
All of that blood, the DNA, to some extent, the digital forensics, the physical evidence collected at the scene. That's what you can rely on. Don't rely on his narrative and his recollection of the evidence. For that reason, don't rely on mine or on Ms. Frissler's. Rely on yours. It is your collective recollection of the evidence that you have heard that is controlling. You know what was said here. You know what the evidence is. We trust you to make the decision. Thank you.
So at the end of closing arguments, the defense attorney did apologize for maybe taking too long in his closing. I think that he assuredly did. And we were at 1.25 and then at 1.5 speed for his closing, and it was still quite drawn out. There were points at the end that I think counsel would have probably been better leading with. The searches on the laptop, Christine Banfield's laptop, for the vacation, and then a hop onto Telegram and then a hop back. I think if he's trying to poke holes in who was using the laptop, that was the one closest in time. But notice the defense didn't say a thing about their audio forensic expert. For that matter, neither did the Commonwealth, but did they need to? Not a thing was mentioned. And when we got to the prosecution's rebuttal, I have to wonder if the Commonwealth felt that the defense was a little condescending to the jury, that he was telling them something that was contrary to their own memory and what they experienced in court, because she leaned into rely on your memory. How many times during that closing argument of defense did we say, that's not what they said? That's not what happened. That's not how it went. And she said, rely on your memory. Don't rely on us, rely on you. We trust you. So I have to wonder if sitting there, the Commonwealth felt that the defense attorney was a little condescending to the jury, telling them this is all unbelievable. Don't trust what you saw in this courtroom. And I wonder if she felt that in that courtroom, the defendant's testimony to the jury was a bit condescending when he said things like, well, this shows that. This shows that this. This shows that that. And she leaned in, we trust you. I think the defense continued their path of trying to throw way too many details in to try to make the jury think that Juliana was bought and paid for and no other evidence was there. Where I take the smallest bit of issue with the prosecution's closing is that the prosecution really leaned into that Brendan Banfield was so in love with Juliana that he had to get rid of his wife. And that's just not how I read the situation. But again, that's just a difference of opinion. And the jury is allowed to have a difference of opinion. They can believe that Brendan Banfield set up Joe Ryan, set up Juliana as a backup because he wanted something different for himself. They don't have to say, oh, well, all of this went down because divorce is expensive and he was so in love with Juliana. What they do have to believe is, was Joe Ryan lured to the house and set up, or did Christine Banfield arrange that encounter with Joe Ryan? And when Brendan Banfield went into the bedroom. Did he know what he was going to find so that he could shoot Joe Ryan and kill his wife? I'm sorry, he referred to her as Christine, and kill Christine. Or was he horrified at what he saw? Was he so shocked that his wife was being attacked that he shot Joe Ryan to protect his wife and himself? Because Joe Ryan posed an imminent threat to him, to Christine Banfield, and to everyone in the house. That's the question of this case. And the defense didn't talk much about self-defense and defense of others in their closing arguments. They went more towards, don't believe Juliana. I guess we'll see how it goes. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss updates on your favorite cases, you're going to need the Law Nerd app at lawnerd.app.com. That way you can stay in the loop on the cases that matter most to you, and you never know when you're going to catch feelings for a new case. So make sure you get it for free on iOS and Android. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a Law Nerd.